I didn't know until today.
Do it in advance.
Oh, wait a minute, it's going to start.
It's waking up.
Yeah, well, it's going to start.
What's the latest thing?
But
It's going to be after.
yeah, but if we had something
That's a
we use all the
positive. I
time
guess
for,
I'm
we
here.
would do that.
Tell me when you're ready, Sharon.
Because, we know we would call the operator. I mean, we don't want to make it a,
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Allen? Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Here.
Mr. Song?
Here.
Mrs. Wadecki? 7 here, 2 absent.
Are there any resident and property owners who would like to address the council? That would be you. 3 minutes, please.
Oh, that's a lot of
Oh, 2 minutes then.
time. Oh,
Just kidding. 3 minutes is
Eric Treesmith in Huntington Way. I am a citizen and taxpayer of Ledyard. As many of you know, I truly love Ledyard. I think it's a great little town. It's probably one of the best small towns in Connecticut, and I consider it to be an honor to live in Ledyard. And I've devoted a lot of energy in order to try to keep it nice for the present, for the future, for our grandchildren. And I take it, as you know, I take it very seriously. My reason for speaking this evening is I'm beginning to observe something that I'm not happy with, and I don't know how to proceed in order to resolve it. The zoning commission was merged into the planning commission as a combined D&D commission, and one of those objectives was to enhance development, and I do not disagree with that. The zoning has several statutory objectives, but in my opinion, the four most important is the protection of protect public health, protect public safety, protect public convenience, and the fourth one is to protect property values. And I'm beginning to observe a deterioration of some property values, which is beginning to impact some neighborhoods and lowering property values. And when it lowers property values, it also lowers tax assessments. And when it lowers tax assessments, it lowers tax revenue, and it gets into a little bit of a spiral downhill. And what's happening is that for several years, we have not had any significant zoning enforcement. There's been a good reason for it. We had a series of zoning officers that were reluctant or did not know how to properly enforce the zoning regulations. Our last zoning officer was just about to initiate a series of enforcement actions when the employment of the town. As a result of the mayor's actions, we now have on board at least 2 days a week probably one of the best zoning officials in Connecticut. He's a past president of Casio. He knows what he's doing. And I applaud the mayor for obtaining his services. I'm quite pleased with that. But what I am concerned about is that I still do not see any, it's almost as if zoning enforcement is not a priority at this time. And it's sort of a policy issue. My understanding is that the council establishes policy, and the mayor and his staff and the town employees will implement that policy. Zoning is a little bit more complicated because statutorily, the zoning official is the agent of the zoning commission. So you could make an argument that zoning enforcement is not quite in the same league that should be joint. And we have approximately 20 serious zoning complaints dating back to the end of May of last year, none of which have been litigated.
Mr. Treacher, you're 5 minutes.
And so what I'm asking the council to do is to make a determination as to where in the overall scheme of priorities does zoning fit, especially when compared with the goal of the new commission, which is to enhance development. I feel that zoning enforcement is lowering tax revenues, lowering property values, improving the quality of life, and it requires guidance, a formal policy on the part of the council in order to turn that around. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other residents?
Taking this opportunity primarily to give an update to the council and the town relative to our pavement management program that has been more formally implemented over the last couple of years, and also is administering, as it were, the $3.5 million bond toward its implementation. So if there's either, you could grab the PowerPoint version, which is the first one, which is a little bit more dynamic, or the PDF version, which is the second one, which is what I'm going from because it's simpler for me to manage there. So the bottom line is, in the modern pavement management approach, is to go with a proactive rather than a reactive approach, going away from a worst first approach where the cost of repairing the worst roads drains you of the available funding much more quickly and gives you a lesser overall improvement or maintenance of your overall average road quality in town. So, and it's also implements the broader range of pavement management approaches, different treatments to reduce the long-term maintenance costs, and therefore you can get, as it were, more roads treated per dollar per year. And that's what we're moving to and have been. And we're going to I'll show you, we're going to make one more big leap this year to another approach or another treatment type. Now this is an important curve here. You've seen this a few times. Just as a reminder, this is probably a standard deterioration curve for a number of things, but it certainly applies to roads. And it is, understanding this helps you observe why a road can look so good for so long and then all of a sudden it deteriorates rather quickly. And the bottom line is that for about the 75% time frame of the road's life, there's only a 40% quality drop-off. But beyond that, the next 25% is more rapid. And if you can catch that road early on or within that first 75% time frame or toward the end of that, the cost of maintaining it or keeping it up is a lot less than if you would have to do that later on. Here they use $1 for each dollar in the first section costs you $8+ in the second section if you let it go. So we're attempting to try to front load our maintenance more to reduce the overall cost over time. And this is just the approach. We've already established a roadway inventory. That was just simply identifying all the parameters of each of our roads in terms of by name, length, square yards, et cetera, et cetera. Then there was an inspection, a detailed inspection by professionals to classify or the condition of those roads. And then from there you could do your planning. And once you do your planning, you implement the plan and you're into the maintenance program. We will go back and do the inspection program after a few years to resynchronize it with reality, because obviously things don't always go exactly as you originally planned, nor do roads deteriorate at a theoretical rate everywhere. So that's the process. Now, here, you can probably enlarge it on your screen, but this is a map which I'll get a larger version of to be more visible at some point. But this shows what was done in the year 2012. And the repair types range from reclamation, which was the orange, all the way down to simply crack sealing. So you got the whole gamut of minimal maintenance to maximum maintenance. And we did some substantial amount of reclamation last year, Rose Hill Road, some more roads in the Highlands that desperately needed it. But we also did an appreciable amount of crack sealing and other intermediate treatments that involved more permanent repairs on Sandy Hollow and on Spicer Hill Road South. And so that's just to show you where we were. This is kind of the leading edge of this $3.5 million bond project. Here's showing some additional treatments that we're doing on the low end that have helped us stretch the lifespan of our roads or prepare them for some more significant treatments. Crack sealing, you've probably seen a lot of that. You should have seen a lot of it. You've probably been driving over miles of it every day now. And that's the actual truck that was used. I think we found a pretty good company that does a very professional job with the right kind of material. It gives us a lasting effort. We added infrared repairs over the last couple of years. You might have seen those in process, but this is what it involves. You actually superheat to the point of in-place reuse the existing asphalt. Remove the unsuitable material. The truck comes equipped with additional asphalt to mix in, and you re-roll it to profile. And so that allows you to pick up areas that save money by eliminating the cost of cutting it all out, regrading it, repatching it, and it leaves you with a much smoother surface, more efficient, and it accomplishes many more square feet a day. And we're doing this on several roads to extend their life, but also we're preparing them for a surface treatment next year. Microsurfacing, here's the new treatment we're going to be going with. This is it looks like pavement when you're done, but it's more robust than a simple liquid sealant. It's got aggregate in it, and it's a pretty sophisticated process that involves a train of trucks that bring in the aggregate, the emulsion, and also water, and then it lays it out. And if you put it in 2 passes, it gives you a good 7+ years of life extension on your roads. And you'll see on the left side there, you see some crack sealing. In the one lane that's not been microsurfaced. So that's the pre-treatment. You make sure to crack seal before you microsurface, and you'll be seeing that in Ledyard this year. Getting to the more of the administrative or details here on where we're at. This is a snapshot at the end of 2012 of where our backlog was for work, as calculated by the pavement management software we're using. And it shows the repair methods that are needed in each, by length of road requiring it, to bring the roads up to very good to excellent condition, 100% as it were. In order to do that, for the roads that aren't simply not requiring maintenance, the defer maintenance category, the 68 miles of road beyond that need $9.3 million of instant money to bring us all up to 100%. In the unlikely event that we don't get that, we have to manage it a little differently. So obviously we're not going to get $9.3 million. I couldn't probably manage that much work in 1 year. But that's a snapshot of, it's another way of addressing, as it were, the question, what's the condition of our roads? So the simplest way, I'll show you a simpler way. So this is our capital plan now. In the absence of the money to do all of that work, this is what we've got planned for this year. And it's simply, I'll just read through, as it were, the approach here. You review your backlog of work, which we just looked at. It's a substantial backlog. You look at what kind of budget you have to work with from the various places you can get money. You identify, as it were, fine-tune the methods you're going to be using and the unit costs for that work, so you can apply it with the budget money you have. And then you establish your priorities, which may involve a number of different things. For purposes of efficiency, you might collect your roads in one neighborhood rather than do it simply on the list as they fall out. So then what we have is, for the 2013-2014 years, this is what we have with the money we have. This is what we've got planned. We've got drainage in both years, quite a bit coming up this year because it's involved with the Avery Hill project. But then we have surface treatment, mill and overlay, level and overlay, and crack sealing over the next 2 years. I won't get into all the details here, but there is some offsetting funding that you see on the top, the bottom of the top right column. That's money that is coming in from the water project to offset, to directly offset the road work because it qualifies under the project to be applied directly to the roads because of the trench paving associated with the water mains. There's also some other funding. Each year there's some other funding that's projected here for some of our roads. That's the BIA funding coming in through the Mashantucket. The roads that are on the Mashantucket list that are eligible because of that for outside funding. That funding was used already for the Lantern Hill repairs that were done this last year. But there are some roads that are eligible, and we'll be seeing that hopefully the next couple of years. Anyway, we'll go past that, and here is what it looks like in map form the next couple of years. A lot more roads being done quickly. The greens and yellows are the more robust repairs. The milling and the resurfacing are the yellow. The overlays are the green. You see that the Avery Hill project has got a considerable amount of that. And then there's some, Shoeville Road is going to be the first project out of the gate this year, April, May. We'll finish off Shoeville Road South with Whitford Road there. And then there's some other ones that are related to the Mashantucket funding, which is the Coachman Pike area, and Lantern Hill Road in White Pine. That's subject to a different timetable. I'm optimistic, probably overly optimistic, that they'll happen all of them will happen in the next 2 years, but that's what we're projecting. Now the purple is the microsurfacing. That's what you see there. And hopefully we'll be able to do more than what's shown there, depending on the outcome of the FBR I just sent into the Finance Committee, securing a lower rate for that process that might allow us to expand in a couple more roads. But anyway, that's graphically or pictorially where we're going this next 2 years. And this is just a summary. I won't spend much time here. This is a simpler way of seeing everything over the next 2 years, all the different processes we're using, the proportion that we're doing from crack sealing up to milling and overlaying, and then the offsetting funding, as I mentioned. So local funds will be covering $2.6 million of this, and that's roughly the balance of what we have left in the bond funds and what's projected for the road restoration funds that are appropriated annually. And then you see the other funds. So a substantial amount of money, $800,000 is expected from the BIA funds if it's approved. So that's a considerable amount for a total of almost $3.5 million. But importantly, 31 miles of road. That's almost a third of our road inventory in 2 years. Capital improvement, I don't want to get into all the details here. I showed you the whole sheet just to legitimize the bottom line here. If you apply all those processes as planned to our road inventory, you will gain 116 lane-mile years of road will be infused into our infrastructure. So we actually can show, at least theoretically, a gain, an advancement of our quality of our roads in town on average. And again, if you want to look at, you're welcome, obviously, to go through that at your leisure to see the details and ask any questions either now or later about that. And this is a projection here, our road surface rating. In 2000, actually, I'll go back as far as 2000 or 1998. Our road surface rating at that time, without any real sophisticated analysis, was about 69. We are at 76 in 2011. Now, we were at 76 in 2011. We're at 78 at the end of 2012. And with the next 2 years, we will level off at 80. I would say that's on the high end of, in talking to the engineer, we're in the higher, we're well above the 50th percentile for towns in southeastern New England with that number there. Okay, and this slide breaks it down by our types of road, and it confirms the approach that we've taken and that is addressing our main roads first to get them up to snuff because of the average daily traffic that we see, and then, of course, try to chip away at our local roads. You'll see that the average road surface rating for our arterial road are 86, our collector roads are 88. So those are our main roads. And then our local roads and our cul-de-sac dead-end roads, they're each at 75. That's an average road surface rating. Obviously, in your mind, you're thinking of the horror story roads that you know about there, and obviously they're not 75, but they're the ones that, of course, will bring the average down. But on balance, this is an objective measure of where our roads were at the end of 2012. And then the average there, you see at the bottom is 78. So this is just our budget history since '96. The funds that were advertised as needed are in the purple, and the actual funding was in the red. And what that means is cumulative deficit relative to what is projected to be needed. And that's historical thumb rule funding, and in some cases I adopted that as my annual request. So the cumulative deficit over those 15 years or so is $6 million, or $330,000 a year. Now, if you take out the $3.5 million bond that was infused basically just as in one shot, you can knock that down to $2.5 million. And this is largely reflected, this deficit is largely reflected in our local roads. We just haven't been able to put the attention on our local sort of side streets as we have been able to, or as we would have needed, because we've been devoting those funds to the main roads. So the bottom line is based on thumb rules, and I've done it in two different ways, but you're looking at $905,000 to $925,000 needed a year to maintain our infrastructure using a entirely proactive approach and the thumb rules for the time frames at which you would do certain treatments based on the deterioration curve. And I spent time with a couple of different engineers independently to verify those time frames as far as the average lifespan for roads that receive different treatments. So $905,000 to $925,000 a year, that would be going on after this program is done in order to keep it where we're at. Now this again just takes that curve, the deterioration curve, the next graph there, and shows the different ways in which you would tackle road repairs. The preservation strategy is what we're advocating now and we're implementing, and that is to catch these roads with some intermediate treatments to keep them above the good range, and do it in such a way as it would result in half of the cost over time as doing it in the rehabilitation strategy, which is let them just go all the way their full lifetime until you have to reconstruct them again, and then do that all over again, and multiply that by your entire infrastructure. And so it's roughly, if you look at the bottom, total cost per square yard over 50 years, one is about 30, one is about 60 if you use the rehab method. So you're basically cutting in half the amount of money that you would spend by using a preservation strategy as we move to. The next slide is a main road. I took all the main roads in town, and I applied to them, based on their present condition, the thumb rules for the type of treatments that they would need and when, and it averages out over time to nearly $700,000 a year just to keep our main roads where they're at. And a little under $700,000. Now I included inflation in that number, so it wasn't fixed. It went overall over that span of time that you see. It includes inflation. Obviously, if you look at the graph year by year and look at the totals, we would not apply funds in that way. They'd have to be leveled somehow. You can see huge peaks in some years and valleys in others, and that's simply the way the numbers add up. But if that average funding is provided, it would be applied in a more level way. Okay, here's an interesting graph that many might be interested in. Orphan roads. These are the worst of our local streets. Some of these names you're probably familiar with because you've heard of constituents on these streets. I put them in alphabetical order in case you want to review them later to see where they stand. The green, those highlighted in green, will be covered under the Elton Heights Water Project. So those will be taken care of this next year and will be removed from the list. But as those are removed from the list, in accordance with the deterioration curve, there are some that are poised and ready to be at 50 and below. next year. We'll probably fall below the curve to replace these. You'll see the worst road on this list here is Pine Lock Drive. That's a rating of 23 out of 100. So that's not too good. And that would require complete, basically, rehabilitation or pulverization and resurfacing from scratch. Not something that's present, and none of these roads are programmed except the ones in green right now. So this shows the kind of predicament we're up against in some of these areas. But obviously we have a bunch of cul-de-sacs that are in bad shape. They receive a very limited amount of traffic compared to a main road. So patching is going to be the treatment until we get adequate funding to tackle them. And we chip away at them little by little. Okay, this is just simply back to system maintenance. What do we do? This is the approach. You integrate the inventory management work, the actual work management, and the GIS, the data collection and processing, to make the system work. And this just shows how that all works together. And we, of course, update our data as the repairs are done. I've given detailed records to the consultant to incorporate those as we have done the work to maintain an accurate road surface rating. Okay, as I said, we identified the actual project costs. I can get that number, very detailed number, to the consultant. And the re-inspecting of the roadways, that's where you have to resynchronize with the actual conditions after you've done the work. We're looking at another comprehensive inspection probably at the end of 2014 after the bond funding is done to see where we really are at. And then the built-in deterioration curve is built into the program. So every year the program knows to take those roads down based on the type of roads they are and where they already are in their lifespan. Additional deterioration is built into the program. Okay, finally, before the summary, just a little sidelight here. It might not seem to be relevant to road maintenance, but roadside canopy maintenance is important in ways that, like I said, might not be noticed. If you have a excessive canopy or a low canopy over a road, that hinders drying of the pavement. I mean, it's pretty noticeable to the average person even driving. And what that does, in addition to maintaining perhaps a dangerous condition, especially in icing situations, at the immediate moment, it allows an acceleration of deterioration of the pavement by allowing the moisture to stay on the road surface, stay in the cracks in the road, and then you get that either the hydraulic pumping of the traffic or you get the effects of the freezing and thawing. And so it's important to consider your canopy maintenance, and these are pictures that were taken in various areas that show a canopy that is well over the road, in some cases very low hanging over the road, and really should be dealt with. And these are main roads. Now there were a couple of roads that we did. Colonel Ledyard Highway was done from center town to the Groton line in 2007, and last year we did Spicer Hill Road all the way from Route 117 to Gallup Hill Road, so the whole length of Spicer Hill Road. Now these are pictures of Spicer Hill Road. Now one thing you might notice is that it doesn't look so dramatically horrible as people might be afraid of when you say you're going to be cutting the canopy back. But at the same time, you can see a distinct difference between the way this looks and the way the other roads look. And what this does is it allows the air, the sun, all just the ambient conditions to facilitate drying on these roads, and it makes such a big difference. People might not notice it, but I think if you were to carefully look at some roads that have chronic problems with canopy, you will see in the areas where it's very shaded, you will see some accelerated deterioration. You get out of that into the sun, and you'll see, wow, no difference in the time frame that work was done, but a substantial, distinct difference in the condition of the pavement relative to those types of areas. And it's about based on the work that I did on state contract, Spicer Hill Road is about $10,000 per mile to do this type of work. And if you were to apply that to all the roads we have not done, the main roads, it's a backlog of about $430,000 to do the entire inventory of main roads. Now, our crews get out and get what they can up to the extent that they can reach with pole saws. We cut that range. This is talking about those efforts that need a bucket truck. Maybe you did, well, you've seen the contractors out there for the power company working on the lines. And of course, on the sides of the street where the lines run, those are all nicely trimmed. And this is simply, we're doing the same thing basically as it were on the opposite side to balance it out. But hopefully we can do some more of that this year. This just is a graph based on a CCM survey. I took the number, the average of towns, other towns that responded to the study applied an average of $255 a mile of road per year to their tree work, and we apply $36 a mile. Okay, the moment you all been waiting for, the summary. Our present average road surface rating is 78, which is a good plus. That's where we're at. And the arterials and collectors are 86, 88. That's very good. I know it hasn't happened instantly enough for people to maybe notice that there's been a big improvement, but over the last 10 years, I'm sure it's obvious enough to most. And then the local streets are at 75, which is a good minus. I mean, it's not horrible, but of course, you wouldn't tell that to someone who lives on Pine Lock Drive. But as an average for all our local streets, it's a 75. Some towns don't even have that as a number for their entire average for all their roads. Backlog is 9.3 million. That would get us instantly everywhere up to very good plus. Projected average by 2014 will be an 80, which is again basically same as we are now, but a little bit better. Average annual funding to maintain that would be $905,000 to $925,000. In the absence of that, we would have to do what we're doing now. We would have to find ways to stretch the life of the roads, extend them to the point where we don't lose them and have to incur a real expensive treatment. Long Cove Road's a good example. That has been paved in various sections over the years. The center section from basically past Conrad Court, maybe a little further than that, all the way, and then down around to Hyde Park, that's lasted since 1994, so it would be a 20-year road surface, and in some cases, some of that substantial stretch of that road is better than some roads that were paved since then. Quality of asphalt is declining. There's a lot of factors we're dealing with. So we will capture, in the absence of that amount of funding, we'll do what we can to stretch the road's lifespan without losing it. But it probably will involve delaying or deferring maintenance on side streets longer. And then just a mentioning of the roadside canopy maintenance. We could get some more money and infuse that into a systematic approach to our road canopy maintenance. That would also reap benefits for our overall extension of our lifespans of our roads, or our life cycle, reduce our life cycle cost based on reducing our deterioration rates. Any questions?
Any questions from town council?
Yeah, arterial and collector, what's the definition of those kind of roads?
Well, it's based on average daily traffic volumes. Arterial would carry the most traffic.
What, for instance, is an arterial road?
Shoeville Road would be an arterial road. Colonel Ledyard Highway, certainly an arterial road. Churchill, Matheson Mill.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Whale had.
We used to call them the plow routes. There was 10.
10, well,
plow.
Yeah. And you'd call them by the Colonel Ledyard route. You'd say, boom, because it's the main arterial road. Yeah.
Right. And what's a collector?
Collector is less than an arterial road, but it receives a lot of traffic because it collects. It's like the immediate main road that collects traffic off of side streets. Spanning Road would be one.
Okay.
Something like that. So they're both. I treat them equally in terms of the need to keep them maintained.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Bill?
Steve, I'm looking at slide 15, and I'm trying to understand and recall. I noticed that in the last few years, we've funded about $400,000 for roads.
Yes.
How does the $3.5 million bond fit into that? Is that reflected there? Or
It's not reflected
It's
here.
not, okay.
I reflected it in the column next to it. I took the 6 million and reduced it to 2.5 million. I took
Okay.
I didn't show it in 12 or 13.
Yep.
Because it's not applied equally each year.
Right.
It's applied as quickly as I can get the project set up and spent. Last year we spent about 1.3 million. In fact, what slide is best to show you that? If you go back to slide 13, where it shows the graph there, 1.36 million was spent in 2012. I'm planning on 2.45 million in 2013.
And that's kind of to catch us up from where we were from, I mean,
Yeah.
prior to those years, we were making good progress in
Right.
funding more, but before that, we were really short funding.
Right. And the dynamic of the way things are funded has changed. It used to be the resolution of the council automatically took 20% of the year-end surplus and applied it directly to roads. Now it's not tied automatically to anything. It's a discrete decision made by the council as to how much to apply. And it just so happens that it's equal about 400,000 each of the last 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I guess my comment is related to the consistency of the data. My recollection from when the bond issue was presented to the town meeting, the numbers don't seem to align to that. And I asked a question at that meeting related to the annual cost to maintain the roads, and at the time the response was, we don't know. And we didn't ask the consultant what that is. And then the response was we're responding at 400,000, that wasn't enough. We think 750,000 is enough, but we just don't know. And I guess my concern is now you are presenting us with data that goes back in history to 1996 with some authority, but 3 years ago we had no clue. So I'm a little concerned of what the validity of that data is, and whether we're just pulling something out and saying we think this is what it is, and we still don't really know. I can understand if we started from 3 years ago and went forward, but I find it a little troubling that when 3 years ago we had no historical data on what it should cost to maintain roads, and now all of a sudden we're coming up with historical data that says we're now $6 million in arrears. And then secondly, my recollection of the projection based on $3.5 million was not an 80 at the end of it, was like 82 or 83. And then we started a little higher than what you're presenting now. So I guess my concern is how fungible this data is, and how are we going to, 3 years from now, have some consistency and be able to adequately, as a council, project what we really truly need for road maintenance.
Well, I think these numbers are tighter than whatever was presented before. I spent a considerable amount more time with them. I've always preached 750,000 for 10 plus years. The number that the consultant gave me then, which he may not have been willing to mention because he was afraid to, was $1 million a year based on his thumb rules. So I said, don't necessarily, let's spend some more time, because the other consultant had a number more like 800,000. The two consultants weren't. One had 800, one had $1 million. The data that shows, the graph that I put together that shows the main road maintenance is based on actual, the most detailed analysis I've done. That's slide 17. takes every main road with its present actual condition from the database of the program, applies to it the historical time frames when it was last treated and how, and uses the thumb rules for how long that particular treatment is supposed to last and then what the next treatment should be. And it projects it out to 2025 in some cases, but I only went as far as the final year for which the data was completely in, which was 2022. So this is the tightest data. I don't think it's very far off from the thumb rules. And when you apply a thumb rule to it, you take a number of square yards in a town, and that's all you use, and say X dollars per square yard, and you end up with a figure of $1 million, basically. And so I think this other data here, the data that you see in these, let's see, which one is it? Let's go back down here. Slide, the one that has the history and the bar graph. This is slow here. I don't know where I put that. You know what slide that is?
15.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, 15. That data I've had in a spreadsheet ever since '96, the red data. And what I did was I went back to that point in time and took what was being requested at that point for the annual appropriation, and I took the actual CPI index. This reflects the increase on the required amount is based on the actual CPI that got paid. So that established, that put in there the inflation rate. And I think, so that might be a new number, but I don't think if you want to argue that 6 million might not be the number, it's going to be several million, whatever it is. So, I mean, yeah, I could go back and look at the presentation we made and what we were projecting by way of a road surface rating. And it may have changed a couple points here or there. I don't know. I have to look at the data that the engineer put in, or the consultant put in the model at that time. What his projections were based on what I gave him for expected maintenance.
Based on that statement there, I guess my concern is that you didn't do that making this presentation, since the last time we had a presentation of this detail was then. And so what you're telling me is now you're presenting data that has no consistency with the last presentation that was made to the town to have incurred a $3.5 million bond issue that was supposed to maintain our roads and bring them up to a certain level.
I don't, you can split hairs over the number. I don't think I presented much of a different picture here tonight than I painted then. And that $3.5 million is not enough to get us caught up. That's basically the bottom line. And you can see that in the actual road conditions that are out there. And any model that you use is not going to be perfect. Maybe we have to put a range down here. I guess it's going to give you a road surface rating between 80 and 85. Maybe that's probably the more appropriate thing to do. But this is what the model is spitting out now with the data that I've given, actual data I've given in the last couple of years to the consultant. So I'm just giving you what the program is presently showing us. And what we presented at that earlier time was what the program actually was showing then, based on the data that he was using. And now we've done 2 years worth of work. Maybe we projected more work than we accomplished at the time. I don't know. I have to go back and see if that's the case. But I don't think this is very out of step with what we presented.
Any other questions? Thank you, Steve. It's kind of interesting on another topic. How far we've come in terms of the technology as far as the presentation. Because remember, a year ago, we were all sitting here flapping through these papers. The public had no way to see what we were looking at. So it's nice to be able to see it here. But it has to be a little disconcerting to somebody presenting, to be presenting something and we're all looking down at our computers.
Well, I'm looking down, too.
Well, but thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. Okay, comments of town councilors at this time. Yes, Councilor Marshall.
A couple weeks back, I attended the ribbon cutting at the Montville Police Station. The mayor was there, Lieutenant Mike Finkelstein was there, a couple other residents, and about 400 other people. I'm sure the mayor will go into details in his report later on the agenda, but I would just like to congratulate the general contractor and the subs that work for him on producing an outstanding building. There was quality and pride everywhere you looked when you walked around that place. It was really well built, and they should be proud of it. And I hope they bid when we go to build our building. That's all.
Any other comments, town councilors?
Folks, I don't think it's news. It's very cold out there. The governor has issued a decree. If you are in need of a place to be warm, or you know somebody in need of a place to be warm, please dial 211. You will get the help to help coordinate that. So wanted to pass that information along. Hopefully that's not the case for anyone in our viewing audience, but perhaps it is.
Any other town councilors? Councilor McGrattan.
Our youth counselor is going off on maternity leave, but her cases are being taken over by two interns that we have from the University of Rhode Island. And she'll probably be back, all things going well, in May.
Any other town councilors have comments? I would just like to address Mr. Treaster's comment just briefly, because I thought it was kind of an unfair characterization. If somebody was dropped in here from Des Moines, Iowa, and were sitting in the audience, they would think that the town council merged planning and zoning, and suddenly our property values had deteriorated. That's what I came away from the discussion, and I just thought that was pretty unfair. We have a cease and desist order. Clearly, we're not using it, but we haven't used it for years. It's not that this suddenly happened when we combined planning and zoning. So for the record, I just wanted to state that. Any other counselors? Approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the 2 public hearing minutes and the regular meeting minutes of January 9th.
Second.
Any discussion, corrections? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Let's see, you all have the communications. I don't believe there were any referrals. Council, subcommittee, liaison reports, admin.
Administration Committee had a special meeting earlier tonight, and that will come up a little bit later. We basically moved forward the pre-act pharmacy services discount card, and we'll talk about that some more later.
Very good. Any questions for admin? Community services.
We met a couple weeks back with the 2 fire chiefs and the LV's director concerning the Administrator of Emergency Services job description. There's a lot of points brought up. There's a well-attended meeting. There's probably about 60 people here ready to use this room for our meeting. There's a lot of moving parts to this job description, and there's a lot of parties involved. There's 2 firehouses, the Ambulance Association, the Mayor's office, and we're going to be working with admin and the mayor and try and put this issue to rest as quickly as possible.
Any questions for community services? Finance.
Finance Committee met last Wednesday and had another special meeting just before this meeting, and those issues were brought to council.
Thank you. IT.
IT has not met.
Land use.
Land use is not that.
Board of Education liaison. Counselor Allen is home with the flu. He did provide a written report. I have not had a chance to read it. Did anybody read it that could give a little highlight for the public?
I didn't
See it. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's not on here?
He sent it to you.
No, he said he had posted it.
He was going to submit one in the next couple of days.
Okay, that's fine then. Thank you. I misread that. Any other liaison reports?
WPCA?
Yes, please.
Okay. WPCA met last night. It was noted by Groton Utilities that a number of Ledyard residents have objected to paying their cross-connection inspection charge. And a cross-connection inspection charge is something that's mandated by the Department of Health. If you have public water and you have a well, every 5 years, the town is required to inspect to ensure that you do not have your well connected to the public water system. It's a health issue. Also, if you do have it connected, you have to have a backflow preventer. The charge is $38.50. There was lengthy discussion on the WPCA about this. It appears that in the process of installing the new water mains that the town has been doing the last 5 years or so, the residents were notified about their assessments. They were notified about the cost of the program, the tax burden, but they were not notified about the cross-connection inspection charge. So there was no decision about what to do about this, but I did want to mention, for the sake of the public who may be listening, this is not something that the town of Ledyard or Groton Utilities does just because they want to. It's required by the state for public health to make sure that our water supply is not contaminated by backflow. And interestingly, Groton residents never complain. They're used to it because they've been paying it every 5 years. Ledyard residents actually pay less than Groton residents. So information for those who are concerned. Other highlights, we talked about future assessments for the Algin Heights project, and we're going to get that started with the help of Director Maslin. We also looked at a couple of developments, and we were very happy to welcome back in November new member Craig Gilbert, and last night Larry Perdue, whom you all approved at the last town council meeting, joined the WPCA. We still have 2 more openings, so if someone is interested in joining this fine team, we'd love to have you. That's my report.
Any questions, Councilor Psalms? Did I read in correspondence that you extended the contract with?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's right here in the report. We also authorized the mayor to sign an extension of the contract with Groton Utilities for another 3 months. We do have financial reports. They were just received yesterday, so the WPCA didn't have time to review them, but we're finally at the point where we can start to analyze our costs and our revenue so that we can make a longer-term decision. But we did extend for 3 months, and I believe the mayor signed that.
Very good.
Thank you.
I may not have signed it yet, but I have it.
Okay.
Report of the mayor.
Okay, thank you. A few things. The purchase of the Volpe property north of the subbase was closed last week using state of Connecticut grant as part of the encroachment mitigation project. Ironically, we started this process in early January, and I probably drove our planner crazy with the, are we there yet, are we there yet, with that project. But, it worked out. It's a piece of property that is of great value to the subbase and therefore to the area in terms of giving them additional capabilities there. And now I will be sending the council a recommendation for assigning that property to a town department. And I have some ideas that you should be seeing that shortly. I have begun the budget meetings with my department heads and town hall staff and going through each of their budgets. And so far they have been, for the most part, complying with what I've asked them to do, which is to give me a baseline budget which only increases contracted increases. And, at this point I have no idea what that's going to do because we have a bit of a handle on what the personnel cost increases are, but there are other large amounts, large items and line items in the budget that we have not yet gotten to. So probably by the middle of next month we'll have a better idea where we are. I have been in conversations with the Board of Ed. I spoke with Dr. Bernier today about where they are. And again, the wild card in the budget is going to be state funding. So we can only do our part and then bring it to the people with our best estimates. As we were speaking today at the Council of Governments, the problem is the people only vote on the expenditure part, and the income part, you sit and wait until the last day of June, if possible, before you recognize what you actually have to charge the taxpayer for that budget. At the COG meeting, State Senator Kathy Ostin was speaking a little bit. She serves obviously as a municipal CEO, but also as our state senator, and has some very interesting insights. And of course, there's always talk about what's happening at the Capitol, what initiatives there are, what the state is going to do and planning to do. And she indicated that legislation has been proposed to empower town councils to act on individual line items in Board of Ed budgets. Some of you may not want to take that on, but she said it had not gone to public hearing yet or anything like that, but I find it interesting that would even rear its head in Hartford. But it shows that people are digging, and I think there are some new faces, including our own representatives up there, that may bring a fresh perspective there. The question was immediately asked, well, how does that fit in with the MVR? What do you do then? And the selectmen from and one of the selectmen indicated that the state does have a way to compensate for certain changes. An example was given where one of the local towns has reduced their superintendent by half. And he said, okay, we do that. It's a cost-saving measure, but you can't account for that. And in fact, someone indicated that you can. The state does have an allowance to do certain efficiencies, but that particular one, reducing the principal position, the state said, no, that doesn't count. So, you're kind of caught in some interesting, if you do have a great reduction, for instance, you would send your junior high school to another town,
wanted to follow up also on Mr. Treaster's comments, because, and I say this because we have had many discussions over the past year, first when Mr. Treaster was zoning chair and also more recently. I would agree that there's enforcement that is not being done. I mean, no one can drive around town and not agree with that. I would also agree with the chairman that it's never really been done systematically. We've never had a consistent, established process. It's always been spot citations, and I can give you examples of that. And I'll prove this to you by saying if any one of you gives me your top 20, and every one of us is going to have a different top 20 list, I venture that most of those pre-exist any of us. I mean, there's one in particular that I drive by once in a while, and if we wait a little bit longer, everything will dissolve into rust. I mean, that's how long this has been. So, I will say this, that we've come a long way in our entire land use process in the town. We've brought technology there, and I have gone on record as saying that when we are fully at staff, we will, and we have the administrative part of the staff right now. We've come a long way between our software and additional staffing. We have the capability to have a consistent process in place. The problem is right now we don't have the zoning enforcement official. We cannot expect in 16 to 18 hours for a person to keep up with just the normal workload, plus do the citations that would have to, not saying we're not doing any enforcement, but to do the type of enforcement that's consistent. You can't just pick on certain individuals and say, okay, we're going to go after those people because they can just start pointing fingers. If you have a consistent process that brings citations and puts them into a process, and again, we've discussed this. Once you start that process, you got to move down the line. 2 weeks later, you do this. 2 weeks later, you do this, or else you know where you're going to end up and what it's going to cost you. So, I expect, hopefully, within the next year, when we do have full-time zoning officials, that we will have a process that will allow us to feed lists like that into the process and get them moving. And I certainly do think it's quality of life. I do think it is a property value issue, but we're not going to solve it, with spot enforcement. That's my report. Thank you.
Any questions for the mayor? Councilor Sones.
I'd like to add something to the mayor's report. I was sure he was going to mention it, so I'm going to read something that was posted today by Assistant Mark Bancroft. He said to the Ledyard residents, great news. We just received the single-stream recycling numbers for December 2012. You have recycled the most ever, all caps, 23.73% for the month. This is fabulous news. Thank you. Keep up the good work. If you know anyone who needs a bin or information on recycling, please let me know. 23% of our garbage we're picking up is being recycled. That's fantastic. Based on a sample of one, myself, we recycle about half our garbage. So I think we can go a lot further, and that's people who are not fully aware of what you can recycle now, and it may be some people who aren't recycling. So you can save the town a lot of money if you separate your trash, plastics, cans, bottles, basically anything that's not garbage you can recycle. Newspapers, all paper. So thank you very much. It's great news. I hope we can keep it up.
Thank you for mentioning that. Any other questions for the mayor?
I didn't know that.
So you would-
I was sure. I didn't say it in town council comments because I was sure.
I don't get a chance to sit in much Facebook.
Oh. You're missing an awful lot.
I know.
We'll keep you posted.
I'm going to call Mark to get a bigger date.
There you go. Any other questions for the mayor? Thank you for the report. Okay, new business. Anybody wish to amend the agenda at this time? There was no old business, I don't believe.
There is one on the attachment going forward. Okay.
Oh, okay. Agenda item number 1, admin.
Just a second here. I will make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with ProAct Pharmacy Services to provide a discount prescription plan.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. A little explanation.
Absolutely. I'm waiting for the computer to open up here.
although it's been in the paper popping up different towns, so people are certainly jumping on board.
Basically, Ledyard has the opportunity to offer residents a free prescription discount card. Again, free prescription discount card. Nothing bad about free. That will provide an average savings of up to 45% off of the retail price of prescription medication. It's not going to cost the town anything. A lot of valuable discounts in this. Again, average savings of up to 45%. It's supposed to have easy access. It's very simple to use. It's going to provide some vision discounts, hearing product discounts. Everything I've looked at on this says that this is a great opportunity. A number of municipalities are buying into this, and so we have authorized the mayor to do that as well, or are authorizing.
Any questions for Councilor Eichelberg? And you can be used at local CVS and local pharmacies.
There's a number of pharmacy discount cards in Connecticut. This is PROACT. You said PREACT before. P-R-O.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, A-C-T.
PROACT.
Just so everybody-
P-R-O-A-C-T.
Right.
Any further discussion? Roxanne, go ahead.
Question, I'm looking at the attorney's comments about the indemnity.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Finance, item number 2.
Motion to authorize the retention of tax overpayments classified as non-refundable as attached to legislative file number 1404 in totaling $3,918.03.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Briefly, these are taxes we paid back in 2009. We've been trying for quite some time to receive verification of the need to return the payment. We did receive a letter from this is Ben and Jerry's, who happens to be in the casino. Did receive a letter recently that stated that the franchise is owned by the tribe and effective that date. We assumed that was it. So provided no evidence that it was owned prior to that date by the tribe, we are going to retain the tax that we paid back in 2009.
Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 3.
Motion to approve FY12 end-of-year budget transfers totaling $212,288.57 is itemized on the legislative file number 1918 attachment.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
This is just routine cleaning up the books at the end of the year. The attached files, you have the revenue and over-expended files were reconciled.
Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 4.
Motion to transfer and appropriate $39,599.04 from LV's Fund 0211, Fund Balance 211-31000, into account 211-20901-57300, new equipment, for the purchase of 2 Stryker auto-load stretcher systems. In addition, grant a bid waiver to Stryker Medical of Portage, Michigan, as a sole source provider.
Second.
Any
Brief-
di-
So briefly, we had an ongoing discussion for several months with LVs on purchasing the auto-load stretcher system. They currently have the stretchers that go with this system in their vehicles. During that time, they've actually worked out a joint venture with Mystic Ambulance to bring the costs down for significant savings. We had the representative here tonight from Stryker to discuss that in a special meeting before that. It is definitely a need for the town. It will ensure that the LVs are ease of transporting patients and with the least amount of potential for injury. I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Any discussion or questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 6. Oh, I'm sorry, item number 5.
Motion to recommend the town of Ledyard appropriate funds from the Ledyard Parks and Recreation Capital Non-Recurring Fund 0203 for the following projects in accordance with Parks and Recreation Commission request for 1, park and athletic field support not to exceed $38,905 to account 203-60101-53335, site improvement athletic fields. In addition, set a special town meeting date for February 13th, 2013 at 6:45 p.m. to consider, discuss, and vote upon the following. Shall the town of Ledyard appropriate funds from the Ledyard Parks and Recreation Capital Non-Recurring Fund 0203 for the following projects in accordance with the Parks and Recreation Commission? 1, park and athletic field support not to exceed $38,905 to account 203-60101-53335, site improvement athletic fields.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
Should we just touch on the software purchase that's not included? I think we all agree that we don't have any information that justifies including the purchase of that. What is it? Windows or Office 20...
Office 2013, which is in beta. Essentially, the discussion at the Finance Committee meeting was that with the mayor, we need to have a consistent policy across the town for IT purchases, and we really can't afford to have one department being out of sync. And my own experience, my own company, we have gotten that. We went to 2007, when it was 2003, and the Navy, the customer was also in 2003. So it creates a unique challenge when you just have, especially in a small town, how to sync software purchases. And recommended to the mayor that we have a single policy as all goes through MIS consistency.
We always say it's never good to be the guinea pig. That's all. That's what beta means, guinea pig. It's expensive, you're unproductive, you wait for everybody, or our strategy is we wait for everybody else to be the guinea pig so we don't suffer lack of productivity trying to figure out the new software. So I think it's a good decision.
Any further discussion? Questions? Oh, yes.
Comment. We spoke about it a little bit at the Finance Committee meeting, and I mentioned it to my staff, and that is that I am recommending that this type of capital, that there's 2 organizations that have funds like this. One is Parks and Recs, and the other is LB. And what I'm recommending is that these be, in the future, and you'll probably see it possibly even in the 2013 budget, that these be included in the SIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. So this comes once a year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is it forces people to plan like the rest of the town does, to have all of their purchases. I know some of these are seasonal, but you could still make a guess at it. It also allows for multi-year funding. And even though it is coming out of a fund that's already has money in it, it's not coming out of the general budget as such, it still allows you to, it forces you to plan. And the other little benefit of that is by ordinance, this particular fund requires a town meeting. Town meetings cost money, they take time, and I think we're probably legal in saying that the budget town meeting that we have would meet the requirements for this, since this is part of the budget. So we can say, yes, we did have a town meeting. We probably mentioned this in the meeting. Yeah. So we save some money, doing this. So, and I've had no, I've mentioned it to both organizations. We haven't had any pushback. So I think it's something that, again, would just streamline things a little bit.
Councilor
I'm
McGrattan?
not sure I understand. You said take it out of the SIP money as opposed to the...
No, not take it out of SIP money. That these projects would be put into the SIP. And remember, in the SIP, there's a whole number of funding streams.
Mm-hmm.
There's, the budget, funds, low SIP. So what this would say is it would say the funding for this is coming out of the Parks and Recs fund.
Okay.
But, we plan in advance.
Essentially what it does, instead of having, like we're having to have a special town meeting for this $39,000 expense, it would be part of the budget, and the town meeting would approve this expenditure as part of the town meeting, and it would already be in the capital plan. So when it comes time to expend the money, as long as you haven't exceeded what the town approved,
Okay.
at a previous town meeting, you don't have to have a special meeting with the expense and time required.
Okay,
So
got it.
Any further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. I do have one item for item number 6, discuss work session issues as time permits. Does anyone else have anything at this time? I received an email late today, and since this doesn't require a vote, I thought it was a good opportunity to discuss this. The town clerk sent me an email that they did some research, and the Secretary of State Attorney came out with not a decision, but said there's no state statute that requires that boards or commissions be sworn in. You know how when you are on a board or commission, you go to the town clerk's office and you have to be sworn in? And it was the town clerk's request that we consider eliminating or changing a bit the tradition of swearing in appointed members. The cost benefit, as far as he was concerned, that you have 125 members to come into the clerk's office during normal working hours. The cost for the clerk to administer the oath, type in each member's information in the oath book, maintaining a pending file. He suggested as an alternative, which I actually like, was that the appointed members just sign an acknowledgement of their appointment and then that be filed. And I just wondered what people thought about that idea. Councilor Solms.
I like the idea of swearing an oath. I think most people take it seriously. I know I did the first commission or committee job I was on. Maybe the committee or the commission could administer the oath.
No idea? Yeah. Anybody else? I'll ask Mr.
my
Curley.
question is, what is other than the individual member coming in, it doesn't add time to the day.
It just takes away from his time doing.
There's a form that, that is kept for every commission, and it's filed, and it's just another thing that we do. I do agree with Councilor Sounds, and I'll tell you this, besides, the person taking it seriously being an official act, very often, some of the commissions, I know Roxanne and I work quite a bit, who's on this commission, are they still on the commission? I can go right into the clerk's office, did this person get sworn in? Is this person, it's amazing, there's some people who never get sworn in. It's a good way to do it. Now, can it be done somehow aside from the town clerk? If it was done by the individual commissions, they'd have to keep really good records.
I thought they were saying there is no requirement to keep records. Is that wrong?
He just said there's no state requirement to administer the oath.
Okay.
Records that the person has in fact accepted.
That they're in the position of doing it.
Accepted the position, yeah.
And why have we been doing it all these years?
Well, because nobody asked why. It was somebody in Montville, we'll give credit to town clerk Lisa Terry in Montville, that found this out, because she was probably trying to figure out why we do it.
Well, the question would be, is Lisa Terry doing it?
Not anymore, probably. Okay, so give me just a quick, real quick, what people think, and I'll get back to, and Roxanne and I will get back to Mr. Curley, Dr. Curley.
I like the swearing in,
Okay.
but I don't necessarily, if it's not required, I still think that this, whoever, prospective member of any board or commission should probably still go to the town clerk's office to sign the acknowledgement form to say, yes, I acknowledge I received the letter of appointment and I'm serving on the committee.
I like the tradition in the ceremony, so I'm sticking with old school.
The ceremony?
Yes, sir.
That's nice.
I think it makes people feel important.
Okay, well, I see where this is going.
I think either way, so.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for them, and nobody seems to complain about going in and being sworn in.
Councilor Solms, I think you already.
Already spoke. I think it's important.
I agree.
Who does it, but it's important.
And I think if you're going to sign an acknowledgement and put that on file, what's the difference between that and signing the oath and keeping that on file?
Yeah, okay.
I'll go so far as to say I think it should be a state rule. I mean, some of the decisions, some of the things that these committees and commissions do are very important, and should not be taken lightly.
Well, I guess we have our answer, and I will respond to the town clerk. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, I think at this time I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned without exception.
I get to do that because Sharon's not here.
That's right. Okay.